cover all the important points related to effective and swift decision making. As you have noticed, it's a part of the leadership process to be decisive, to focus on effective decision makings. And anybody who thinks he or she can be a leader without being decisive or capable of taking swift and effective decisions is obviously living in a very, very different world. In real life, to be an outstanding leader, you have to be able to take decisions when the need is the most. As I said, in those unique leadership moments that require you to take a call. So with that, we are now at the end of our presentation, but I'm very, very pleased to take up a number of the questions that have been asked of us, both from all of you as we were making the presentation, and even from some of the participants who had registered early and who are entitled, therefore, to have asked a question at the very beginning. So with that, let's take up a few of the questions that we have here. We have Rodney asking us, what is the secret of manipulating a meeting to one's need? That means, how do you manipulate a meeting as a leader to get the outcomes that you want? Now, first of all, as I've been saying consistently all through, leadership is not about manipulation, really. Manipulation has an element of deceit in it. This is not about deception. This is about authenticity. Leaders have to be able to convince the group, convince their followers that they are recommending a direction or suggesting a goal that has the good of all at heart. So I don't think authentic or effective or truly successful leaders ever manipulate. They definitely cajole, they persuade, they influence, they try their best to convince the other side, but I don't think they would ever manipulate, because manipulation is about partially sharing of facts. Manipulation is about, half truths. Manipulation is about suppression of facts. I don't think a good leader does that, and I would not ever use the word manipulation with leadership. Instead, I would say influence, but that has a positive twist to it. So Rodney, I think you got to keep in mind that when we talk about really, really exemplary or outstanding leadership, it's all about persuasion, influence, using facts and data, not trying to deceive anybody. And I think you must keep that in mind, because it's really critical that leaders are truthful, authentic, ethical. As I said in my presentation as well, you have to perform with high ethical standards and high standards of probity and honesty. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Raviraj Atre has asked, how and why is informed decision making better than intuitive decision making? Well, frankly, I haven't ever said that. I in my presentation also, I've been maintaining that it's always good to use intuition along with facts and data, and an informed decision that's based on the facts of a given situation at the present moment. Now, why do I say this? I say this because intuition is really a subconscious process that also helps the brain to process information which is lying there somewhere hidden in the recesses of our mind. We aren't able to understand or fathom the process, and that's why we think it's imperfect. But given the fact that we don't even know how a brain takes a reasonable decision with facts, I think it's prudent to say that, look, both intuition and decision making are parts of the same cognitive process, and both need to be relied upon. However, intuition alone is not enough, and a data-based decision alone is not enough, because let's face it, we are emotional beings, and if a decision doesn't seem right to you emotionally deep inside you, if you don't feel joyous about it, then there may be something in the data that you have overlooked and that you're missing out on. So I think it's always good to have a balance of the two, and both intuition and fact-based decision making are critical for success. The third question from Aradhana Mathur is, there are instances when we fear to take decisions. I'm not sure whether to follow my intuition at that time or go out with available facts and information. Again, I've answered this question. If you, despite all the facts before you, that suggests that you should take the next step. If you are still hesitant because you don't feel that the decision is right, maybe it's time to take a short break, take a little time off, and revisit the decision maybe a day later or 2 days later, depending on how critical it is. But as far as fear is concerned, they say fear is false evidence appearing real, FEAR. So if you are relying on false evidence and not facts and data, and are therefore fearful because of something that's been told to you and you haven't got data to prove it, I think then probably you must take the leap, even if you are fearful. But intuition doesn't necessarily make you feel fearful. Intuition gives you a sense of comfort inside of you. So I think together with my answer to the earlier question, I hope this gives you a sense of what I'm referring to. Moving on to the next question. Arvind Shukla has asked how to take effective and swift decisions through consensus in the team. We talked about this in the presentation. You have to obviously get everybody on board, especially if there are experts, domain experts in your team as well. Srinivas asks, there's an experienced team member in my team and he's more experienced than me. So what's the effective way to convince this person to move along with me? Obviously, this has been the crux of our presentation all along. We need to make sure that everybody's on board, and convincing with data, with facts, with your persuasive skills as a leader, with influencing is all very critical. Mohammed Najmuzaman asks, how does a person's culture play a role in bias? I answered this in the course of my presentation. Based on the fact that we are influenced by our culture, our beliefs get set up, and beliefs are the basis of biases, and we need to work on those, obviously. Another question from Aradhana: while managing a team of people with diverse skills and varied years of experience, how do you bring in a decision-making culture before the leader even strives for effective decision-making methods? I think we answered this in the presentation as well. It's all about clarity as to what it is that you want to achieve and getting everybody on board. As I said, decision-making is not a solitary unfolding. It's really a group process. And decision-making as a part of leadership is essential to enable this entire process of taking people along with you. Sukanya has a question about, do you have decision makers separate from execution people, which means do you have decision makers and doers? The answer is no. Decision makers and doers are both rolled into one. You need to have leaders who are good at decision making and good at execution, and that's part of the reason that they're made leaders in the first place, because they can deliver. I remember I said in the very beginning that leadership is about action. Decision making is about action. It's not about simply taking a call and saying back. No, it's about getting the people, yourself and your followers, to the envisioned objective, to the envisioned goal. So you can't really split the two. Then Mr. Patwardhan says that how do we deal with decisions that go wrong? Well, obviously you acknowledge if there's been a lapse on your part. And if so, you acknowledge and say, we made a mistake, and move on from where you are right now. And frankly, some decisions will go wrong because, as I have been emphasizing, we aren't fortune tellers. We aren't clairvoyants. We can't always see what's happening in the future. So you take a call today with the best of ability and information available to you, and then see how things pan out. Obviously, you have to take everything into consideration to minimize the risks. But if, in spite of all that, things go sour, which can happen, live with it. Move on. Take a call at that future point in time. Najmuzaman also asks another question about how to identify the right maker of a decision. Should we be position-based or task-based? I think this is something that will be determined by the objectives that we are trying to achieve. If it is something that has never been achieved before, anybody can become a leader. You often have, I'm sure you've seen movies where somebody who is considered to be a completely a backbencher or a guy who is perpetually quiet suddenly in certain situations emerges a great leader. That's because leadership is situational. Leadership